Winning a big photography competition can catapult your photography career to great riches, so it's no wonder that there are some photographers out there who will do whatever it takes to make sure that they win. So a few weeks ago, I actually wrote about this subject in my weekly newsletter, and I got so many responses from people giving me other examples of photographers who've tried to cheat their way to victory. So let's begin the rundown with this first example, which I think is incredibly soft. Oh, and before I forget, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. I always forget that bit. So this image was disqualified from the World Press Photo Competition. And can you guess why? Because the photographer cloned out a tiny bit of a shoe or a foot that was in the background of this image. I feel for this photographer. My middle name is Spot Remove. Actually, no, I got it changed to Generative Fill. I think the spot removal tool is the most powerful tool after the crop tool. I don't think this is bad at all, but obviously the rules of the photography competition dictate that you can't manipulate your photographs in any way, shape or form, I suppose. But I don't know, personally, I thought this was a bit harsh, but let me know what you think in the comments, and by the way, they get a lot worse than this. Next up, we have another soft one, but this one, I suppose, is open for debate. What do you think? Because me, personally, again, I'm with the photographer on this one. In 2012, this image won the National Geographic Photography Competition. Won it, the whole thing, won, but then was later disqualified. Do you know why? Well, if we look at the original version of the image, we can see on the right-hand side of frame, there is a bit of litter, a plastic bag, a bit of trash, and the photographer cloned it out. I am 100% with the photographer on this one. I would have also cloned out the bag. Now, whether or not that's breaking the rules is not up to me or the photographer, that's down to the organizers of the photography competition. But as an ethical thing to do, in my opinion, absolutely fine. I don't think it's manipulation or cheating. I basically don't think he read the rules. Well, what do you think? Disqualified or not? Now, this next image makes no sense at all. So this incredibly dramatic photograph of an elephant was disqualified because of image manipulation. Now, I know what you're thinking, but you're wrong. So this image won the photographer the title of Africa Geographic Photographer of the Year, but unfortunately, it was revoked when it was revealed that the photographer had actually tidied up the elephant's left ear. So here is another photograph of the same elephant, and if you look at its left ear, you can see it's torn to shreds. It's all rough around the edges, and in my opinion, very characterful. If you look at the left ear in the photographer's award-winning image, you can see that it's all been cloned out and smoothed off. Now, the bit that's so confusing about this is the photographer denies it and says that he accidentally fixed the elephant's ear. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never accidentally fixed or cloned something in or out of a photograph. I'm always very intentional with my editing. Either way though, I still think it's fairly minor to just fix a bit of an animal's ear. But that's coming from me, Mr. Clone Removal. Wait a minute. News, Justin, we need to go back to the elephant image. My wife has just come in as I'm mid-recording this video, and I showed her the example of the elephant ear that was cloned. And we noticed actually the ear has not been tidied up at all. The ears have been swapped. If you look at this image of the same elephant, you can clearly see that the elephant's left ear has a big chunk missing out of it, a very distinctive piece of flesh missing. And when you look at the left ear of the competition winning image, of course, that piece of flesh is no longer missing, which leads us to believe it's been cloned out, which is what that article I was reading suggested. However, just look at the elephant's other ear. The right-hand ear of the award-winning elephant has the distinctive piece of flesh missing. yet the tusks are the same. So it's not like the image has been flipped. The ears, for some reason, have been swapped over. Something's going on, something fishy is going on with that elephant. So quite rightly so, it's been pointed out by the award organisers that it should be kicked out of the competition because, man, at first I thought it would just been a cloned out ear, but actually no, it's something much more than that. Man, I can't wait to read the comments in this video. Right, we're gonna get on to the serious stuff now. All of these images thus far, I think, have been pretty tame, and I don't think they're cheating at all, and I don't see anything wrong with them. But coming up, we are going to see some serious audacity. But before we do that, I need to thank the sponsor of this video, which is Squarespace. Now, if you don't know who Squarespace are, they're an all-in-one website building platform. And what that means basically is if you need your own website, but you haven't got the skills to build it and code it yourself, or perhaps you don't have the finances and the time to hire a web development company to do it all for you, well, you can just do it yourself using Squarespace's online drag and drop system. It's intuitive, you can register your own domain, and if you've got all of your copy ready and all of your media ready, you genuinely can knock up a professional looking website in 24 hours or less. And if you get stuck, they've got 24/7 customer support, but I just recommend going on YouTube, looking at a few tutorials on how to build your Squarespace website, and you will have a very fancy website with an online store, an online gallery, you can have your own members area, there's tons. Basically everything you can do with a modern day website, you can do with a Squarespace website. So go to squarespace.com/Heaton and you'll get a free try. And if you like that free trial, use the offer code Heaton for 10% off your first purchase. So we are ramping up the seriousness now, and this one this one actually is my favorite, and I'd say it's cheeky. It's a bit more cheeky than it is serious, but this photograph won a Nikon photography competition. So Nikon Singapore ran a photography competition called Look Up, and this was the winning entry. But let's just play with the levels of this photograph and see if we can spot anything untoward. Oh my god, yes, the photographer has just cloned out an aeroplane and dropped it perfectly in the center space between those ladders on the photograph. Now you could argue that he created this composite and just dropped it into the competition without really giving it any thought and not checking the rules, which, we all do. Who reads the small print? I certainly don't. But the caption that came along with the photograph was something along the lines of, "Oh my, I was so surprised to see a plane fly straight overhead and I managed to capture it." And the best thing about this cheating image is the internet memes that it created. Yeah, definitely one of my favorites in this list, and incredibly cheeky, but I don't know, I still think harmless enough. Like, I'm not angered by it. I just think it's funny. Right, we are ramping up the scale of seriousness much further towards the top. Now, wildlife photography is a sacred thing. You do not alter your wildlife images. We've already seen this with the elephant's ear. And if you enter into a prestigious wildlife photography competition and you make any adjustments, well, you're going to be in big trouble. Seriously, you should look at some of the terms and conditions of these wildlife photography competitions. You can't crop, you can't clone anything out, you can't even adjust your exposure to create, let's say, a high key image. You could do nothing. You have to shoot 99% of the image in camera with only minor adjustments. It's so strict, which is why I have so much respect for those wildlife photographers who win these big competitions. Now, of course, a lot of the photographers know about these rules and regulations, and they're not going to try and pull the wool over the judges' eyes with their cleverly photoshopped images, because of course the judges want the raw files. Well, these next two photographers thought that they could cheat their way around the rules, and well, it's quite incredible. So the Natural History Museum runs a wildlife photography competition. It is incredibly prestigious, and this was one of the winning images, which was later disqualified. So here we have a wonderful image of an Iberian wolf captured leaping over this fence. But some people question this, asking would the wolf in fact leap over the fence, or is it more likely to squeeze between the gaps in the fence? This aroused suspicion and some investigation was done, and it turns out that this wolf is actually a tame, trained wolf that you can hire for your own filming or photography purposes. That's right, a wildlife photography competition winner was not wildlife, it was a trained wolf. Now I should say the photographer denies this, however he was still stripped of his title. Now what gets me is this is a massive competition with like 94,000 entries or something like that. So how would you feel if you'd missed out on a spot because somebody entered a fake image? Now of course the image isn't fake, but you know, it's not wildlife, is it? Now this next one is good. Oh, this next one's so good. Now here again we have a Wildlife Photographer of the Year competition, and this was the winning image, which shows a beautifully captured anteater on a termite mound where the termites are glowing green under a night sky. Oh, it's just beautiful. Apart from the fact that it's a stuffed anteater. So it turns out that an anonymous source reported the image as being fake, and then the Natural History Museum had to look into it, and then experts were brought in, and all kinds of like this went all the way to the top. And as it transpired, the anteater is the same anteater that sits at the entrance of the 𝘧𝘧𝘧𝘪𝘭𝘪𝘢𝘵, I think that's how you pronounce it, 𝘧𝘧𝘧𝘪𝘭𝘪𝘢𝘵 National Park in Brazil. So if you go to this national park in Brazil and you walk in and you get your ticket or whatever, you're going to see this anteater and his stuff there. He'd taken it, he'd put it in his frame, and he'd taken the shot thinking no one would notice. Now, of course, I should say the photographer denies this. He says it's not the case, and he did show 3 raw files. The first raw file being an empty shot of a termite mound. The second raw file was the one that won the competition with the anteater on. The third raw file was again an empty termite mound. He says that the anteater came in, stood still for only enough time to take that one image, and wandered off again. And actually, this is kind of plausible. It really is. If you think about it, if you're taking a long exposure, I don't know the settings of this image, but let's just say it was 3 to 5, 7 seconds long, I'm not sure. And you're not going to take that long exposure whilst the anteater is moving into frame, because you know it's just going to be a blurry mess. You're going to wait, you're not going to move, you're not going to breathe. And then when the anteater gets into position, you take your shot, the first thing you're going to do is press the playback button on your camera, look at it and go yes, by which time the anteater could have then just scurried off. And again, you wouldn't take a photograph with the anteater scurrying off. So it actually does, in my mind, make sense that the photographer denies this and says he only has the one raw file. He also had a witness to say that this happened. But then when you look at the experts and the credibility of the experts who inspected the image and concluded that it was in fact the exact same anteater as the one in the entrance of the national park, well, hey, I don't know, man. It's open for debate. Do you know about this story, and what do you think? Either way, it's probably not funny for the photographer or for the other photographers who missed out on the top spot of that prestigious competition. It's just funny. I don't know. I just think all this is quite hilarious. Now we have a couple of images that were disqualified because it transpired that they were AI. And I'm not sure how to feel about this, because here's a beautiful image of 2 surfers paddling out over a swell and the breaking wave in the sun, and you look at it and you think, oh my God, what a shot. Well done, that photographer. Well done, you. Now the photograph won the competition, and then a little while after, the photographer came out and said, actually, you know what, this was AI. And we have another story here, almost exactly the same. This photographer used this image and won the incredibly prestigious Sony World Photography Awards. So I believe what happened in this case was he refused his award and said, actually guys, you need to sort out your stringent photography check-in process for these awards, because this, my friends, is AI, and I have done this to prove a point. Very similar to the last image with the surfers, but a much bigger photography competition. Now with this image, we've got a bit of a plot twist. There's a photography shop called Charing Cross Photo, and they ran a photography competition whereby this image was entered into it, and then it was disqualified. It was kicked out. It was saying, you can't enter this photograph into our competition because we don't accept AI entrances. Now, the photographer, quite rightly, was perplexed by this because this is actually a phone shot taken of her son at some kind of art installation. I'm not sure, but it's a cool photograph. I can see why the judges might have actually thought it was AI with the two mannequins there in the background. But that's the problem with AI, is that it's just going to cause suspicion. It's like back in the day, it's 10 years ago, when you'd put up a beautiful image and everyone would go, oh, Photoshop. And now it's changed from Photoshop to AI. So everyone's going to start assuming that your great image that you've captured is AI. That's the biggest concern with AI for me. I don't know, what do you think? Are we going to have to start proving that our images are not? Is the onus going to be on the photographer to say, no, I am not guilty of AI? Is that where we're going? I flipping hope not. I'm going to link to every article from every image below so you can read more about those images and hear the photographer's side of the story. And if you're struggling for those Christmas gifts, I have a calendar available. It's 12 of my landscape photography images taken in the past year or so. Each image has a QR code, so you can scan that code and watch the YouTube video where see exactly how the images were taken. There we go. Thank you and goodbye.